"Dad, why is my picture in your wallet?" The little girl's voice was soft, almost lost beneath the organ music, but it cut through the cathedral like a knife. Jonathan Whitmore's hand froze inches above the wedding ring. A black leather wallet hung from the child's fingers. An old photograph slipped halfway out. The bride's smile vanished. Somewhere in the crowd, a champagne glass cracked against the floor, and for the first time that morning, America's most admired billionaire looked afraid. 30 minutes earlier, everything had seemed perfectly arranged. The cathedral overlooking Lake Michigan glowed beneath rows of crystal chandeliers. White roses lined the aisle. Reporters waited outside. Business leaders, senators, and celebrities filled the pews. Jonathan Whitmore stood near the front in a tailored black tuxedo worth more than most people made in a month. To the world, he looked like a man who had everything: wealth, influence, respect. Yet there was a strange heaviness in his chest that morning. One he couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the faint scent of a perfume drifting through the bridal suite hallway earlier. Perfume he hadn't smelled in years. Or maybe it was the photograph hidden inside his wallet. The one nobody knew he carried. Not even Vanessa. Jonathan reached into his jacket while waiting for the ceremony to begin. His fingers brushed the worn edge of the picture. For a moment he considered taking it out, looking at it one last time. Instead, he pushed the wallet back into his pocket and walked toward the altar. Some memories were easier to carry than confront. Outside the cathedral, 7-year-old Maya Brooks sat quietly on a stone bench beside the service entrance. Her faded blue dress was clean but old. The hem had been stitched by hand more than once. Beside her sat a paper sack containing a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. She hadn't touched it. Her eyes remained fixed on the large delivery doors. Inside, her mother was working. Alana Brooks had been hired as temporary kitchen staff for the wedding reception. 12 hours of work. No benefits. No guarantees. Just enough money to help cover next month's rent. Maya knew. Her mother hated leaving her alone. But childcare cost money they didn't have. "Stay near the church," Alana had told her that morning. "And if anything feels wrong, find me immediately." Maya always listened. That was one reason her mother trusted her. The other reason was simple. Maya noticed things. Small things. Things adults often missed. Nearly an hour later, a black SUV pulled up near the side entrance. Security guards stepped out first. Then Jonathan Whitmore himself emerged briefly from a private side corridor connecting the reception wing to the cathedral. The movement attracted Maya's attention immediately. Not because she recognized him. She didn't. But because something fell from his pocket as he walked. A wallet. Neither Jonathan nor his security team noticed. The wallet landed beside a flower planter near the curb. Maya waited, counted to 10, then 20. Nobody came back for it. She crossed the sidewalk, picked it up carefully and looked around. The owner was already gone. Her first instinct was to return it. Her second was to check for identification. She opened the wallet. Credit cards, business cards, cash. Then she noticed a hidden slot behind the cards. A photograph peeked out from the corner. Maya pulled it free. Her breathing stopped. The little girl in the picture had her eyes, her smile, even the tiny scar near her eyebrow. And on the back, written in fading blue ink, were 4 words that made her stomach tighten. "For my little girl." The words sat on the back of the photograph like a splinter beneath Maya's skin. "For my little girl." She stared at them again, tracing the faded blue ink with her thumb. The handwriting looked hurried, as if whoever had written it had been afraid of running out of time. Around her, wedding staff moved carts loaded with silver trays toward the reception hall. Nobody paid attention to the small black girl standing beside the flower planter. Nobody noticed the photograph trembling slightly in her hand. Maya carefully slid it back into the wallet. Her mother had taught her never to take what wasn't hers, even if she was curious, even if something didn't make sense. Especially then. She closed the wallet and looked toward the cathedral entrance. The man who dropped it had already disappeared inside. For a moment she considered giving it to security, but something stopped her. A feeling she couldn't explain. The same feeling she got when a teacher marked the wrong answer right, or when a stranger smiled too quickly. Something was off. Maya started walking toward the side entrance. The cathedral doors stood open, and soft organ music drifted into the afternoon air. As she approached, she noticed a framed photograph near the welcome table. The groom, Jonathan Whitmore, the same man whose driver's license sat inside the wallet. Maya froze, then slowly opened the wallet again. She looked at the photograph of herself, then at the framed wedding portrait, then back at the photograph. Her stomach tightened. Nearby, two women in expensive dresses were whispering. "Vanessa finally did it," one said quietly. 7 years and she's getting the Whitmore name. "About time," the other replied. His mother must be relieved. Maya didn't understand most of it, but she remembered the number. 7 years. For some reason, it stayed with her. She slipped the wallet under her arm and entered the cathedral. Inside, sunlight poured through stained glass windows, painting blue and gold patterns across the marble floor. The guests were already seated. Hundreds of them. Rich people. Important people. People who looked like they belonged there. Maya immediately felt out of place. Her worn shoes seemed louder than everyone else's. Her dress seemed older, smaller. She almost turned around. Then she remembered her mother's voice. If something belongs to someone, return it properly. So she kept walking. Near the back row, a television monitor displayed a live security feed from the entrance cameras. A technician adjusted cables while waiting for the ceremony to end. Maya glanced up absent-mindedly. The screen showed Jonathan arriving earlier that afternoon. Security surrounding him. Reporters shouting questions. Then the footage jumped. Not faded. Jumped. One moment Jonathan was stepping from the SUV. The next moment he was already halfway inside the building. Nearly 3 minutes missing. The technician frowned and tapped the screen. "That's weird," he muttered. Then his phone rang and he walked away. Maya looked back at the monitor. 3 missing minutes. She didn't know why that bothered her. Only that it did. The ceremony music swelled. Bridesmaids entered. Guests stood. Maya moved quietly along the wall, still carrying the wallet. Up ahead, Jonathan Whitmore waited at the altar. Calm, controlled, untouchable. Yet as she drew closer, she noticed something strange. His eyes weren't on the aisle. They drifted once toward the front row, toward an older woman wearing pearls. His mother, and for the briefest second, she shook her head. It was tiny, almost invisible, but Jonathan immediately looked away. The kind of gesture most people would never notice. Maya did. Then she reached the front and saw something that made her heart skip. Resting beside the wedding ring on a silver tray was a folded note card. 3 words had been written across the top in the same faded blue handwriting she had just seen on the back of the photograph. "For my little girl." The note card sat beside the ring as if it had always belonged there. But Maya knew better. The handwriting was not clean like wedding calligraphy. It leaned slightly to the right, uneven at the ends, the same tired blue ink as the words behind the photograph. "For my little girl." Maya stood so still that the flower girl behind her nearly bumped into her back. Jonathan saw her then. Not fully at first, only as a small figure near the front, holding something black against her chest. His brow tightened. Vanessa, already halfway down the aisle, kept her smile fixed, but her eyes flicked once toward the wallet. Too quickly, too sharply. Maya noticed. Jonathan stepped down from the altar before anyone could stop him. The music faltered for half a second, then continued uncertainly. "Sweetheart," he said quietly, controlled enough that only the first 2 rows could hear. "Where did you get that?" Maya held the wallet tighter. "You dropped it outside." His hand opened, expecting her to give it back. She did not. Not yet. Instead, she lifted the folded note card from the silver tray with 2 careful fingers. Soft gasp passed through the front row. Jonathan's mother, Elaine, leaned forward. "Jonathan," she said, her voice gentle but warning. "Not now." Maya looked from the note to Jonathan. "This is your writing?" Jonathan stared at the card. Something moved across his face so briefly most people would have missed it. Pain. Then caution. I wrote something like that a long time ago, he said. But that card shouldn't be here. Vanessa reached them, her veil trembling faintly near her shoulder. It was probably placed there by the planner, she said, smiling down at Maya with a sweetness that never reached her eyes. Children pick up things and misunderstand them. Maya looked at her. I didn't misunderstand the picture. The cathedral went colder. Jonathan lowered his voice. What picture? Maya opened the wallet and slid the photograph out again. This time she showed him the front. Jonathan did not take it at first. He looked at the little face in the picture, then at Maya's face, then back again. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but like a man holding a door shut against a storm. Who are you? He asked. Maya Brooks, she said. My mama is Alana Brooks. The name struck him so hard his hand dropped from the ring tray. Elaine's pearl necklace shifted as she stood. Vanessa's fingers closed around her bouquet until one white rose snapped at the stem. Jonathan did not look away from Maya. Alana, he repeated, barely above a whisper. Maya reached into the pocket of her old blue dress and pulled out another photograph, creased down the middle and soft from being handled too many times. That's my mama, she said. In the picture, Alana Brooks stood outside St. Catherine's Medical Center, younger, thinner, smiling through exhaustion. Around her wrist was a silver baby bracelet, too small for her, looped around 2 fingers like a promise. Jonathan took one step back. Where did you get this? Mama keeps it in the coffee can behind the flower, Maya said. She told me not to bring it unless somebody tried to say I was lying. Vanessa laughed once, too softly and too late. Jonathan, this is clearly rehearsed. But Maya turned to her immediately. You said my name before I told you. The silence that followed was different from all the others. Jonathan slowly turned his head toward Vanessa. Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes moved away from his. And in Maya's small hand, the old photograph of Alana lined up perfectly with the hidden picture from Jonathan's wallet, as if both had been torn from the same forgotten life. For several seconds, nobody moved. The cathedral remained frozen in that strange place between ceremony and scandal. Jonathan still stared at the photographs. Vanessa still held the crushed stem of the white rose. Maya stood alone beneath towering stained glass windows that seemed larger than ever now. Then the machinery of wealth began to work. Not loudly, not cruelly, smoothly, professionally, the way powerful people solved inconvenient problems. A man in a charcoal suit stepped forward from the front row. Jonathan's attorney, Richard Halstead. Silver hair, calm voice, perfect posture. Mr. Whitmore, he said gently, perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere private. He smiled at Maya. The smile was polite enough to seem kind from a distance. And perhaps someone can help this young lady locate her parent. Maya knew what he meant. Not help. Remove. Another man approached from the opposite side. Head of security. Former Secret Service. Broad shoulders. Earpiece hidden beneath his collar. Miss, he said softly, why don't you come with me? We'll make sure you're taken care of. Taken care of. Another phrase that meant something different than it sounded. Maya tightened her grip on the photographs. Around her, guests relaxed slightly. The interruption was being handled. The child would be escorted away. The wedding could continue. Order would return. Jonathan remained silent, watching, thinking, not yet understanding. Elaine Whitmore descended from the front row with measured grace. Pearls, navy silk, the confidence of someone accustomed to controlling rooms without raising her voice. She stopped in front of Maya. You seem like a very intelligent girl, Elaine said. Which is why I'm sure you understand that important events can be disrupted by misunderstandings. Maya looked up at her. Elaine smiled. Your mother works here today, correct? Maya nodded once. Then let's find her. The sentence sounded reasonable, helpful. Yet something inside Maya tightened. Because Elaine had known her mother's employment before anyone told her. Before Maya had mentioned it. Before Jonathan had asked, Richard extended a hand. "Come along, sweetheart." Maya didn't move. The attorney's smile thinned almost invisibly. "You're making things harder than they need to be." Nearby, a server entered carrying a tray of champagne flutes. The faint clink of glass echoed through the silence. Somewhere beyond the walls, rain tapped softly against cathedral windows. The ordinary sounds made the tension feel even sharper. Jonathan finally spoke. "Nobody is forcing her anywhere." Richard immediately stepped back. "Of course not." But the damage had already been done. Maya had felt it. The assumption that she didn't belong. That her words carried less weight because of her age, her clothes, her place in the room. Vanessa stepped closer to Jonathan and lightly touched his arm. "This child is confused," she said quietly. "And somebody is clearly using her." Jonathan didn't answer. Vanessa continued. "You know how these things happen." Maya raised her eyes. "Then why did you say my name?" Vanessa's hand froze against Jonathan's sleeve. Tiny pause. Barely half a second. Then her smile returned. "I heard someone say it." Maya shook her head. "No." The cathedral grew still again. "Nobody said it before you did." This time even Richard looked toward Vanessa. Not because he believed Maya yet. Because he remembered. The little girl was right. Vanessa had spoken the name first. The bride laughed softly, as if the observation were meaningless. "She's a child. She's mistaken." Elaine immediately stepped in. "Enough. This has gone far enough." The authority in her voice returned. The room began settling again. The situation seemed under control. Maya looked down at the photographs in her hand, then at the old picture of Alana, then at Elaine, and that's when she noticed it. Tucked behind Elaine's pearl bracelet was a faint blue ink stain on the side of her thumb, the exact same shade as the handwriting on the note card and the words written behind the photograph. The blue ink stain should have been nothing. A mark. An accident. The kind of detail adults overlooked every day. Yet Jonathan's eyes remained on his mother's hand longer than they should have. Elaine noticed. Her fingers immediately folded around the bracelet, hiding the stain beneath the pearls. A small movement, almost elegant, but too quick. Maya saw it. Jonathan saw it too. Nobody said anything. For a few seconds, the rain against the cathedral windows became the loudest sound in the room. Then Elaine smiled. "This is becoming absurd." Her voice remained perfectly measured. "Jonathan, your guests are waiting." The billionaire did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Maya. Really looked at her. The old dress, the worn shoes, the photographs she refused to surrender. There was no triumph in her face. No excitement. No grief. If anything, she looked tired, like a child carrying something heavier than she should. "Do you have anything else?" Jonathan asked quietly. Elaine's expression tightened almost invisibly. Richard shifted his weight. Vanessa looked away toward the altar. Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Mama told me not to show it unless somebody tried to say she was lying." The sentence landed differently this time. Jonathan crouched slightly to meet her eyes. "Show me." Maya glanced toward the service corridor at the side of the cathedral. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Not fear for herself. Fear for someone else. Her mother. "They'll fire her," she whispered. Jonathan followed her gaze. "Nobody is firing your mother." Maya studied him for a long moment, deciding whether to believe that. Then she carefully set the photographs inside the wallet and reached beneath the lining of her dress. A hidden pocket. Hand-sewn. The stitching was uneven, clearly done by hand. She pulled out a small yellow envelope folded nearly flat from years of being carried. The paper was soft at the corners. Jonathan immediately recognized the logo printed in faded blue across the top. St. Catherine's Medical Center. The same hospital visible in Alana's photograph. Maya held onto the envelope even after removing its contents. It wasn't one item. It was several. A hospital bracelet, a folded receipt, and a photograph smaller than a credit card. Jonathan took the bracelet first. His breathing slowed. The plastic had yellowed with age. The printed information was faded but still readable. Patient, Maya Brooks. Date of birth, October 17th. Jonathan frowned. He remembered the date instantly, because it was wrong. 7 years ago, he had received a brief message from his mother while traveling overseas. Alana had delivered early, she claimed. Complications. The baby had died shortly after birth. Jonathan remembered the date because he had spent that entire night staring at a hotel ceiling in London. But the bracelet showed a birth date nearly 3 weeks later. He turned it over. The admission number remained intact, untouched. Real. Where did you get this? He asked. Mama kept it. Maya answered. She said hospitals don't remember people. So sometimes you have to remember for yourself. Jonathan fell silent. Then he unfolded the receipt. It was from the hospital gift shop, dated the same day as the bracelet. One purchase, a silver infant bracelet. Jonathan's chest tightened. He remembered buying one, not from a gift shop, directly from a jewelry store downtown. He had carried it in his coat pocket for weeks before the birth. Slowly, he picked up the tiny photograph. His fingers froze. The image showed Alana sitting in a hospital bed holding newborn Maya. But part of the photograph had been cut away. Deliberately. Clean scissors. Someone had removed the person standing beside the bed. Jonathan stared at the missing section. Not because of what was visible, because of what wasn't. There was still a man's hand remaining in the frame, resting gently on the hospital blanket. On the ring finger was a signet ring engraved with the Whitmore family crest. Jonathan's ring. The one he had lost 7 years ago. Across the room, Vanessa's face drained of color. And for the first time that day, Jonathan looked not at Maya, not at the photographs, but directly at his mother. Jonathan did not say a word. The silence that followed was somehow worse than anger. His gaze remained fixed on the tiny photograph, on the fragment of a hand that should not have existed, on the signet ring he had not seen in 7 years. Around him, the cathedral seemed farther away. The guests, the flowers, the wedding music, all of it felt muffled, as though he were listening from underwater. Then he folded the photograph carefully and slipped it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Not the wallet, not the tray, his jacket. Maya noticed. So did Elaine. That small decision changed the room. Jonathan turned to Richard Halstead. Walk with me. His voice was calm, almost ordinary. Richard immediately followed him toward a side hallway beside the sanctuary. Nobody stopped them. Nobody knew what had just happened. Except Maya. She watched Jonathan disappear through the doorway and knew he wasn't walking away from the problem. He was carrying it with him. The corridor beyond the cathedral was quiet. Soft yellow lights glowed against polished wood panels. Rain tapped gently against tall windows overlooking the lake. Somewhere farther down the hall, a television played quietly in a staff break room. The sound of a baseball game drifted through the building. For a brief moment, the ordinary noise felt strangely comforting. Then Jonathan spoke. I want every security recording from today. Richard nodded. Of course. Not edited footage. Raw footage. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. You think someone tampered with it? Jonathan stared through the rain-speckled glass. I don't know what I think. That wasn't entirely true. He knew one thing. Too many details were beginning to point in the same direction. Richard pulled out his phone. I'll contact the security contractor. Jonathan stopped him. No. Richard looked up. Use Daniel Mercer. Daniel was Whitmore Holdings' private digital investigator. He reported only to Jonathan. No assistants. No intermediaries. No family access. Richard hesitated for less than a second. But Jonathan noticed. Problem? Richard forced a smile. No. Jonathan filed the reaction away. Another detail. Another tiny crack. Back inside the cathedral, Maya sat quietly on a wooden bench near the side entrance. She still held the yellow hospital envelope. Vanessa approached alone this time. No security. No lawyer. No audience. She sat beside Maya and smoothed her dress. You're causing a lot of trouble today. Her voice sounded almost sympathetic. Maya didn't answer. Vanessa reached into her purse and removed a small white envelope. There are people who can help your mother. Maya finally looked at her. What kind of help? A better apartment. A better school. Medical insurance. Vanessa smiled. The sort of opportunities most families dream about. Maya's eyes dropped briefly to the envelope, then back to Vanessa. If I take that. Vanessa remained silent. Maya finished the sentence herself. You want me to leave? The smile faded. Not completely. Just enough. Maya carefully pushed the envelope back toward her. Mama says people who want the truth usually tell it first. Vanessa stared at the child for a long moment before standing. She took the envelope and walked away. Maya watched her go. Not because she was proud. Because now she was certain. Whatever this was, it wasn't about money. 15 minutes later, Jonathan returned. His expression had changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. The look of a man who had stopped dismissing possibilities. Richard handed him a tablet. Daniel found something already. Jonathan glanced down. The security footage from earlier appeared on screen. The missing 3 minutes Maya had noticed were gone because someone had manually deleted them. Not corrupted. Deleted. And the access credentials used to remove the footage belonged to a user account with administrative privileges. Jonathan read the account name once. Then again. Slowly. The account wasn't registered to security. Or to the wedding planner. Or to hotel management. It belonged to someone he had trusted almost every day for the last 7 years. Vanessa Pierce. Vanessa Pierce. Jonathan read the name a third time before locking the tablet screen. He did not react. No anger. No accusation. Nothing that would warn anyone what he had just learned. That frightened Richard more than if he had shouted. Jonathan slipped the tablet beneath his arm and looked toward the cathedral. Through the open doors, guests were still seated. Conversations had begun again in cautious whispers. The wedding existed in a strange limbo now, neither cancelled nor continuing. Somewhere near the reception hall, silverware clinked softly as staff prepared meals nobody seemed interested in eating anymore. Jonathan's gaze found Maya sitting alone on the bench, still holding the hospital envelope, still waiting. He crossed the room. Maya. She looked up. Yes, sir? The title stung him unexpectedly. Can I borrow the envelope? Maya hesitated, then handed it over. Jonathan opened it carefully. Inside remained the bracelet, the receipt, and several folded papers. Nothing unusual, at least not at first glance. Then Maya pointed to a crease near the bottom. You missed one. Jonathan unfolded the final sheet. It wasn't a letter. It was a visitor log from St. Catherine's Medical Center. Names, dates, signatures, most faded beyond recognition. But one line remained perfectly clear. Visitor Jonathan Whitmore. Time, 8:12 p.m. Jonathan stared at it. I don't remember signing this. Maya nodded. Mama said that's why she kept it. Jonathan looked at her. Why? Because everybody told her you never came. The answer landed quietly, like a stone sinking into deep water. Jonathan closed the paper and turned toward Richard. We're going to ask a few questions. 20 minutes later, they gathered in a private conference room near the reception wing. Not an interrogation. Not officially. Just a conversation. Elaine sat near the windows. Vanessa sat across from her. Richard remained by the door. Maya occupied the smallest chair in the room, her feet dangling above the floor. Rain streaked the glass behind them. A security camera above the doorway blinked red every few seconds. Recording. Jonathan poured himself a glass of water, then left it untouched. Vanessa, he said calmly, tell me again where you were this morning between 11 and 11:15. Vanessa blinked once. With the wedding coordinator. The entire time? Yes. Jonathan nodded. Interesting. He slid the tablet across the table. The screen displayed the deleted security footage report. Vanessa's face remained composed. Barely. Someone accessed the system using your credentials. Then someone stole them. Jonathan nodded again. Noak Yasaschin. No raised voice. That's possible. Silence followed. The camera light blinked. Red, red, red. Then Maya spoke. Can I ask something? Nobody expected it. Jonathan looked at her. Go ahead. Maya turned toward Vanessa. When did you first see my picture? Vanessa's answer came immediately. Too immediately. Today. Maya nodded slowly. Then why did you know which picture was mine? Nobody spoke. Vanessa's eyes shifted toward the envelope on the table. Just for a second. Maya noticed. Jonathan noticed. The little girl continued. I never showed you the other one. Another silence. Longer this time. The kind that made people aware of their own breathing. Vanessa folded her hands together. I don't know what you're talking about. Maya didn't argue. She simply reached into the envelope and pulled out 2 photographs. One was the hidden picture from Jonathan's wallet. The other was the hospital photograph with the missing section. She placed both on the table. Which one did you mean? Vanessa stared. Her answer didn't come this time. The room remained perfectly still except for the soft vibration of a phone somewhere inside a purse. Nobody reached for it. Nobody looked away. Jonathan finally leaned back in his chair. Calm, patient, watching. And for the first time all afternoon, Vanessa stopped looking at Maya like a child and started looking at her like a threat. Vanessa stopped looking at Maya like a child and started looking at her like a threat. The change was subtle. A tightening around the eyes. A careful stillness. The kind people learned after years of hiding things. Nobody in the room missed it. Rain continued sliding down the conference room windows. The security camera above the doorway blinked quietly. Red, red, red. Jonathan rested his hands on the table. Calm, patient, waiting. There's something else, Maya said softly. Every head turned toward her. She looked down at the yellow hospital envelope resting in her lap. Mama didn't know I brought it. Jonathan frowned slightly. Brought what? Maya reached inside and removed something smaller than everything else she had shown them. A cheap silver flash drive attached to a faded blue ribbon. It looked ordinary, almost disappointing. Richard leaned forward. Vanessa's shoulders stiffened. Elaine's expression did not change at all. That frightened Jonathan more than panic would have. Maya held the drive carefully. Mama kept it with the letters. Jonathan extended his hand. May I? Maya hesitated, then nodded. Only if everybody listens to all of it. Jonathan accepted the drive. Daniel Mercer arrived less than 3 minutes later with a laptop. Nobody spoke while the file loaded. The progress bar crawled slowly across the screen. 20%. 40. 60. The silence became unbearable. Then the file opened. Audio only. The recording began with static. Distant hospital sounds. A rolling cart. A monitor beeping. Then a woman's voice. Weak. Exhausted. Alana. Jonathan recognized it immediately. 7 years disappeared in an instant. Please, Alana whispered. Just let him see her. Jonathan stopped breathing. The room vanished around him. The voice continued. He deserves to know. Another voice answered. Calm. Controlled. Familiar. Elaine Whitmore. Nobody moved. You need to understand something, Alana. The recording crackled slightly. Jonathan has responsibilities bigger than this. Alana began crying softly. She's his daughter. And that changes nothing. The words landed like stones. Jonathan's face drained of color. The audio continued. I can make sure you're taken care of financially. I don't want money. Then what exactly do you want? A long pause. Then Alana answered. I want my daughter to know her father. Nobody in the room breathed. Jonathan stared at the laptop screen as if the words themselves might change. But they didn't. Elaine's voice returned. Cold. Certain. If you love that child, you'll leave. The recording shifted. Footsteps. A door opening. Then another voice entered. Younger. Nervous. Vanessa. 7 years younger, but unmistakable. The paperwork is ready. Jonathan closed his eyes. For one desperate second, he wanted the recording to stop. Instead, it became worse. Will he ever find out? Vanessa asked. Elaine answered immediately. Not unless one of us tells him. Silence. Then Vanessa laughed quietly. Not cruelly. Not loudly. Just enough. The kind of laugh people make when they believe a problem has been solved. The audio ended. Nobody spoke. Maya sat perfectly still. She wasn't looking at Elaine or Vanessa. She was watching Jonathan. Waiting. The billionaire did not move. Did not blink. Did not speak. The color had completely left his face. Every memory he had carried for 7 years suddenly looked different. Every explanation, every loss, every silence, all built on a lie. He slowly turned toward his mother. Elaine looked back at him. For the first time in his life, she seemed unsure. Jonathan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again. Still nothing. The room remained silent except for the rain against the glass. Maya lowered her eyes. Not because she was afraid, because she finally understood how much the truth could hurt. Several seconds passed before Jonathan reached forward. He removed the flash drive from the laptop, set it carefully on the table. Then he looked directly at Richard Halstead. His voice was quiet enough to force everyone to listen. Call my attorney. The room remained silent long after Jonathan spoke. Nobody rushed. Nobody argued. The words themselves had already changed everything. Call my attorney. Within an hour, the wedding was over. Not dramatically. No shouting. No scene. Guests quietly gathered their coats and left beneath the gray Chicago sky. Reporters waiting outside received a brief statement from Whitmore Holdings announcing that the ceremony had been canceled and that a private legal matter required immediate attention. Inside, lawyers began preserving evidence. The hospital recording, the visitor logs, the deleted security footage, the access records connected to Vanessa's credentials. By nightfall, formal notices had already been issued. Vanessa Pierce was removed from every pending position connected to the Whitmore Family Foundation. Her access to company systems was suspended. Investigators were retained to review years of correspondence and records. She wasn't led away in handcuffs. Life rarely worked that neatly. Instead, she was left to sit alone in a hotel conference room while attorneys documented every decision she had helped hide. The consequences would come one legal document at a time. Elaine Whitmore faced something far worse than public embarrassment. The Whitmore Holdings Board convened an emergency review. Trusts, family foundations, and charitable funds she controlled were placed under independent oversight while the investigation proceeded. For decades, she had shaped outcomes with influence and certainty. Now every decision would be examined by people she could no longer command. 3 days later, Jonathan visited St. Catherine's Medical Center. Not as a billionaire. Not with cameras. Not with executives. Just a man carrying 7 years of regret. He stood in a records office holding copies of documents that should never have been hidden. Across town, attorneys hired by Whitmore Holdings began helping Alana correct years of damage. Unpaid medical bills caused by insurance disputes were resolved. Housing issues that had followed her for years were addressed legally, not as charity, as restitution, as fairness delayed too long. When Jonathan finally found Alana, she was finishing a shift at a community health clinic. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. There were too many lost years standing between them, too many questions, too much hurt. So Jonathan began with the only thing he knew was true. I'm sorry. Alana looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a beginning. Weeks passed. Maya remained exactly who she had always been. She still noticed details other people missed. She still carried the yellow hospital envelope everywhere she went. She still corrected adults when they forgot things. One afternoon, Jonathan invited Maya and Alana to dinner at his home. Not the giant formal dining room used for donors and politicians. The kitchen, the warm one overlooking the lake. Rain tapped softly against the windows while soup simmered on the stove. A lamp glowed over the wooden table. No cameras. No lawyers. No speeches. Maya sat in a chair that was slightly too tall for her. In front of her rested a glass of milk filled all the way to the top. Beside it sat the old hospital bracelet, now preserved inside a small protective case. Jonathan had returned it to her himself. Nearby, on a shelf above the counter, stood a framed photograph. Not hidden behind credit cards. Not tucked inside a wallet. The photograph showed Alana holding newborn Maya in the hospital bed. The missing section had been digitally restored using archived records. Jonathan stood beside them, one hand resting on the blanket. For a while, nobody said much. The kind of silence that no longer hurt. Then Maya looked up from her soup. "You know what?" Jonathan smiled faintly. "What?" She glanced toward the photograph on the shelf. "Mama always said the truth takes a long time when rich people are involved." Jonathan laughed softly despite himself. Maya took another sip of milk, then added, "But it still got here." Jonathan looked at the little girl across the table and couldn't find a response. Not because he disagreed. Because for the first time in 7 years, the smallest person in the room had been the one brave enough to tell the truth, and somebody had finally listened.